Dad canceled my 18th birthday for my brother, then Grandpa showed up, exposed Mom's affair, changed his will, and now Dad wants me back. About 2 weeks ago, I was gearing up to celebrate my 18th birthday at home, but things didn't go as planned. My younger brother, who's 15 and, unfortunately, a total nightmare, decided he wanted a weekend getaway without me. That single decision led to the whole birthday party being scrapped. If it wasn't clear already, my brother is clearly my dad's favorite. Around here, whatever my brother wants usually becomes law. Things used to be more balanced when my mom was still with us, but she passed away from lung cancer a couple of years back. Ever since then, life at home has been rough, especially for me. My dad seems to have tunnel vision when it comes to my brother and basically expects me to handle everything myself because I'm older. This year, I had planned to spend my birthday evening out with my friends. Naturally, my dad was going to cover the costs, he had said so himself. But the day before, my brother threw a fit. Apparently, he didn't make it onto the football team and claimed he needed to get away to clear his head. I wasn't exactly shocked he didn't make the cut. He's bratty, self-centered, and honestly just not a good player. He's got no teamwork skills and a major attitude problem. Still, he acted like the world had ended. What blew my mind was watching my dad actually give in to his tantrum right in front of me. I decided then and there to speak up. I told my dad there was no way I was staying home on my birthday while they ran off for a guy's weekend. But that's always how it goes. Whenever my brother needs space, he and my dad disappear together. They're both really into fishing, and one of my dad's friends owns a cabin out in the woods, so it's pretty easy for them to take off whenever they feel like it. Now, I've never been the outdoorsy type. The woods creep me out. I'm not into adventure the way they are. In the beginning, I actually volunteered to stay home, thinking I'd have the place to myself. But that quickly changed. These days, they don't even bother asking if I have plans. They just leave, and I'm expected to deal with it. And here's the kicker, I'm not even allowed to have people over while they're gone. My dad is super strict about it. He thinks any kind of gathering is going to end with the house wrecked. One time, I invited just a couple of friends over and we were super careful not to mess anything up. Still, my dad went through the security footage afterward and lost it. I got a full-blown lecture the next day about how he didn't trust any of us because we were just a bunch of teenage boys, and he was convinced that never leads to anything good. So when they're away, I'm basically grounded by default. I can't have friends over and I can't go anywhere either, because my dad insists it's not safe. And that's exactly why I didn't want to be left behind on my birthday. Being stuck home alone meant no friends and no going out. I was turning 18, for crying out loud. That's a milestone, and I wanted to celebrate it the way I chose. But no, my brother couldn't even let me have that one day. My dad initially offered to take me along and have someone house sit for the weekend, but then my brother threw a fit again. He insisted I stay home because I'd never been to the cabin and didn't know how things worked out there. He claimed it'd just be extra work trying to introduce me to everything, and he was sure I wouldn't enjoy it anyway. Plus, he said having me there would ruin the trip for him, since people from the football team, some of whom I'm friends with, would be messaging me birthday wishes, and that would just remind him of his failure. So just like that, my dad backtracked and told me I couldn't come. Once again, I was stuck at home. This whole pattern of favoritism has been happening ever since my mom passed. It's always been clear to me that my dad's favorite is my brother, not me. I never really said anything before, just kept swallowing it down. But that day? I couldn't hold it in anymore. I exploded. I started yelling at my dad, telling him exactly how I felt and how he'd been treating me since Mom died. He never acknowledged my achievements. I could win competitions or get top marks, and he'd barely notice. Meanwhile, my brother got showered with praise for the tiniest things. The way he acted around us was totally different. He was warm and present for my brother, while he stayed distant with me. I had always told myself that maybe it was because my brother was more like him, so they had that natural bond. But even so, that didn't make it okay to treat me like an outsider in my own home. So I finally put my foot down. I told him straight up, if he left me home alone on my birthday and didn't let me either have my friends over or go out with them, then I'd just do whatever I wanted and they wouldn't be able to stop me. That's when he hit me with the threat. He said if I dared disobey him, he'd cut off my college funds and leave me with nothing. And the worst part? I'm starting college in just a couple of months. I don't have any savings or backup plan, so I had no choice but to back down. So on the morning of my 18th birthday, I watched them pack up and leave without me. I had to cancel all my plans. My dad did try to make it up to me by saying I could go out with my friends after they got back, and he'd even pay for a bigger party. But it wasn't the same. I didn't want a party later. I wanted to spend my actual birthday with the people who mattered to me, not sitting home alone like I didn't. I spent all of my birthday feeling heartbroken and honestly just emotionally drained. That night, I cried myself to sleep. But the next morning, something unexpected happened. I was woken up early by the doorbell ringing nonstop. When I dragged myself over to check who it was, I couldn't believe it. My grandpa was standing at the door. Now, just to explain, my dad's parents passed away when I was really young. They were already elderly by the time I came around, and since my dad is the youngest of four, he never stayed particularly close with his side of the family. After his parents died, we pretty much only saw the rest of them during holidays and special occasions. On the other hand, I used to be really close with my mom's parents. When she was alive, they'd visit often. Even though they live out of state, they always made the effort to fly in and spend time with us. They used to say the trip was worth it just to see us smile. But everything changed after my mom passed. And it only got harder for my grandpa. Just 8 months after losing his daughter, my mom, he lost his wife, too. They were both in a car accident. My grandma fought for her life for a couple of days, but in the end, she didn't make it. My grandpa survived, but the crash left him paralyzed from the waist down. He lost both his legs and has been using a wheelchair ever since. Because of his condition and the distance, I've only been able to see him once a year during the holidays for the past 2 years. It's been hard. Before all this, he was such a lively, energetic man. Losing both his wife and daughter took a huge toll on him. These days, he's so quiet and withdrawn, it breaks my heart every time I see him. Everyone tries to be kind around him, but he once told me that being pitted just makes him feel worse. So, when I'm around him, I try my best to act like my usual self, even if deep down I'm holding back tears because I miss who he used to be so much. That's part of the reason I never opened up to him about how things have been with my dad and my brother. I didn't want to burden him even more when he was already going through so much. I figured telling him would only make him feel powerless, and that was the last thing I wanted. So you can imagine how overwhelmed I felt when, the day after my birthday, he showed up at my house with his nurse to surprise me. That gesture meant more than I could ever say. Sure, plenty of relatives had sent birthday wishes, but my grandpa made the effort to travel all the way out here, despite being in a wheelchair, just to be with me. That alone hit me hard. Especially because I knew deep down that my dad or my brother would never do something like that for me. The second I saw him at the door, I broke down crying. He had to calm me down before I could even manage to say thank you. I tried to hide how upset I was by saying I was just really touched that he went through all that trouble for me despite his mobility limitations. But I think he saw right through that. He could tell something was off. Not long after, he gently started asking where my dad and brother were. At first, I tried to come up with a few harmless excuses, but honestly, I was so tired of pretending like everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I finally told him the truth. He sat quietly for a moment, taking it all in. Then the shock wore off and he just got mad. Not at me, at them. He looked me in the eye and told me that if I wanted, I could come live with him for the next couple of months until I headed off to college. Truthfully, that sounded like the best possible plan. I had already decided to attend college out of state, partly because I couldn't stand the idea of living under the same roof as my dad and brother anymore. And as luck would have it, my college is actually a lot closer to my grandpa's place than it is to my dad's. If I stayed with grandpa, I'd only be a couple hours drive from campus instead of needing to book flights every time I wanted to go home. And to be real, my absence here wouldn't even be noticed. My dad had my brother, and my brother had my dad. I didn't belong in that equation anymore. So I didn't hesitate. I told Grandpa I'd move in, and he said we'd wait for my dad and brother to get back before leaving because he had some words for my father, and he wasn't about to let this go. That day, Grandpa and I sat and talked about everything I'd been dealing with since my mom passed. It felt like the dam had finally broken. I had someone who truly cared and was willing to listen. My friends knew bits and pieces, but it's not like they could do anything to help, and they had their own stuff going on. I wasn't close enough with the rest of the family to open up to them either. When Grandpa asked why I never told him sooner, I explained that I didn't want to make him feel helpless. He told me if he'd known, he would have tried to get custody. But the truth is, that wouldn't have worked. My dad didn't do anything overtly abusive or illegal, he just emotionally neglected me, and that's hard to prove. Still, Grandpa said he would have found some way to step in. He wished I had said something earlier. But I hadn't. And so this is how it all unfolded. I had been suffering silently for years, but this birthday fiasco? That was the breaking point. Thankfully, Grandpa had shown up at just the right time to pull me out. So the following morning, when my dad and brother finally returned home, they walked straight into a storm. Grandpa, who usually treated both me and my brother fairly and without favoritism, didn't even glance at my brother. He went straight for my dad and confronted him about everything I had told him. He didn't raise his voice or anything, but the disappointment in his tone hit hard. And for the first time ever, I saw my father look truly ashamed. He actually seemed nervous. Turns out, my dad had always tried to look good in Grandpa's eyes. Every time we visited him after Mom died, he'd make a big show of treating me and my brother equally, like he was trying to prove he was doing a good job as a parent. But that morning, there was no act left to put on. My grandpa was done playing nice. And I couldn't help but feel a little satisfied seeing someone finally hold my dad accountable for the way he's treated me all these years. After a few intense minutes of my grandpa tearing into my dad, he turned to me and my brother and told us to head out for a while. He said he needed to talk to my father privately, and he didn't want either of us coming back until he called us. It felt kind of weird, but it was clear this wasn't the time to argue, so we left. Now, my brother and I aren't exactly close. We're more like two strangers who happen to live in the same house. So once we stepped outside, we went in completely different directions. He ended up hanging out at one of his buddies' places, and I went to visit one of mine. We were gone for about 45 minutes before my phone rang. Grandpa was calling us back. When I got home, I could tell something serious had gone down. Grandpa looked furious, like his anger hadn't even cooled a little. And when I looked over at my dad, his eyes were red and puffy. That really threw me off. I'd maybe seen my dad cry once in my entire life, so to see him like that? I knew something major had happened during their talk. Grandpa didn't give me many details. He just told me to start packing only the essentials for now and that we'd worry about the rest of my things later. So I went to my room, grabbed what I needed, and within half an hour, I had a bag ready. Then the three of us, me, Grandpa, and his nurse, got into a cab and checked into a nearby hotel. That's when Grandpa told me I'd be living with him from now on. Honestly, I was okay with that. Actually, it made perfect sense. Like I said before, my college is closer to Grandpa's place than my dad's, so staying with him would make moving into my dorm a lot easier. Still, I had to ask. I wanted to know what exactly went down between him and my father. But Grandpa just shook his head and said it wasn't something I needed to worry about. Right now, he said, my focus should be on my future, not my dad's mistakes. What really stung was how my dad didn't say a single word to me as I left. No goodbye. No take care. Nothing. My brother didn't even look up from his phone. It was like neither of them cared that I was walking out of that house, maybe for good. 2 days later, Grandpa and I caught a flight back to his place. And just like that, I started a new chapter of my life. I wasn't expecting to hear from my dad anytime soon, if ever. I figured he had made peace with letting me go, and frankly, I'd stopped wondering what he and Grandpa had argued about. If he was fine with me leaving, then so be it. But then, a couple of days ago, I got a message from him. He said he was sorry. He admitted that he hadn't realized how left out I'd been feeling. He said he had failed as a father, especially when it came to me. He confessed that he'd gotten so wrapped up in my brother, his one emotional connection, that he'd ignored me without even knowing it. He explained that he had always seen me as different from him, and because of that, he kept his distance, convinced we wouldn't relate. Meanwhile, he felt naturally bonded to my brother. Then he said the one thing that really hit me. He told me that not building a real relationship with me was the biggest mistake of his life. I guess my grandpa had really gotten through to him. None of what he said was surprising to me, though I already knew all of it. And the truth is, I was never jealous that he was close with my brother. I was always closer to my mom anyway. What hurt was how he treated me, like I was barely there. And the worst part? He never even realized he was doing it. Now that I'm gone, maybe it finally hit him. He ended the message by saying he wanted to make things right. He knew I was living with Grandpa now and planning to stay there through college. Still, he asked me to come home even if just to talk things out because, in his words, that's what Mom would have wanted. And you know what? He's probably right. My mom always wanted us to spend more time together. She kept trying to push us closer. We just never listened. But even though I know she'd want me to give him a chance, I'm not sure I'm ready for that. I haven't responded to his message yet. I don't know if I want to. I haven't even started college yet, and that's just around the corner. Once I do, I plan to come back to Grandpa's place on alternate weekends, not my old home. That setup works better for me not just because it's convenient, but because I have a real connection with Grandpa. I've never had that with my dad or my brother. So right now, I don't feel like I owe anyone a reunion. But then again, if my dad is trying, if he's reaching out, does that mean I should meet him halfway? I've been going back and forth in my head ever since I read that message. I don't know what the right move is. What if I told him I didn't want to move back in with him? What if I just stayed here with Grandpa and let things stay this way? One random thing I keep thinking about, my dad always insisted the house couldn't be left empty. Even when we took family vacations back when Mom was alive, he'd hire someone to watch the place. He used to say it wasn't safe to leave it unattended. So maybe that's part of the reason he always had me stay behind when he and my brother went on their fishing trips. Who knows? Maybe that's all it was. And then there's this other thought that keeps creeping in, and I don't even know why, but part of me wonders, am I really his biological son? I've heard stories where adoptive or stepchildren get treated like second-class citizens, and it makes me wonder. No one's ever said anything to suggest I'm not his son. I've never taken a DNA test or anything like that. As far as I know, I am his kid. But if I wasn't? Would it even change anything? At the end of the day, he raised me with my mom. Biological or not, he was my father. And he should have treated me like his son. Like I mattered. That's what hurts the most. Anyway, I know a few of you were asking if I knew for sure whether he was my biological dad. I don't. But if I ever find out, I'll let you know. Update 1. After thinking about it nonstop, especially after some of you brought it up, I finally asked my grandpa if I was really my dad's biological son. I couldn't ignore the question anymore. Not after everything that's happened. There was one particular comment my grandpa made that kept replaying in my head about how he would have tried to get custody of me if I told him earlier what my dad had been putting me through. That really stuck with me. I mean, he wouldn't have said that unless he believed he had some chance of winning custody, right? That thought just wouldn't let go, and eventually, I knew I had to ask him directly. It took a lot of courage. I had to really psych myself up. But last night, I finally did it. I sat down with him, and before I could even second-guess myself, I just blurted it out. Am I really my dad's biological son? He was clearly caught off guard at first, but then he gave me a look that told me he'd been expecting that question to come up eventually. He sighed and said that even though my mom had tried hard to keep it a secret, he thought I was old enough now to know the truth. And the truth? I am my dad's biological son. That's been confirmed without a shadow of a doubt. Apparently, multiple paternity tests were done to prove it, not just once, but several times. It wasn't a question of biology. The real issue was something that happened before I was even born, something that seems to have planted a seed of resentment in my dad's heart. Back then, before my mom got pregnant, my dad had been constantly neglecting her because of work. They had only been married for 2 years, and they'd been together for 4. My mom, feeling alone and unimportant, ended up having an affair with one of her friends. She regretted it deeply, and when my dad found out, she ended things and they agreed to go to couples counseling. But shortly after that, she found out she was pregnant, and the problem was, she didn't know who the father was. My dad wanted to terminate the pregnancy right then and there, but my mom refused. So they had to wait until the pregnancy reached a stage where a paternity test could be done. Until then, her affair partner was involved in everything because, well, the baby might have been his too. My mom said she wanted to do right by the baby, whoever the father turned out to be, and that if the child wasn't my dad's, she still wanted all 3 of them to co-parent. Naturally, my dad hated that idea. He insisted that if they were going to raise a child, it would be just him and my mom, no third party involved, no matter who the biological father was. They fought about it constantly. Still, they chose to stay together, probably because they really did love each other. But that decision ended up affecting me the most. Even after the tests proved I was my dad's biological child, and more than one test confirmed it, he couldn't seem to let go of what had happened. My mom cut all ties with the other man, but it still wasn't enough for my dad. After I was born, he demanded even more tests just to make absolutely sure. He even went behind my mom's back and had a few done without telling her, just to remove any doubt. When they all came back positive, proving I was his son, that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. Even though the proof was there, even though I had nothing to do with what happened between them, he held on to that anger. And instead of directing it at my mom, he ended up directing it at me. He chose to stay with her, chose to move on, but clearly he never actually did. And since I didn't share his personality or interests, since I wasn't like him, I became an easy target. Looking back, it all kind of makes sense. When my mom was still alive, they seemed to get along pretty well. I never would have guessed they had that kind of baggage between them. But maybe the reason they managed to stay civil was because he had me to quietly take out his bitterness on. And I didn't even know. That's just one part of the whole story, though. The reason my dad is suddenly feeling guilty now, the reason he reached out and said all those things, is because Grandpa told him he was cutting him out of the will. My dad never got much of an inheritance when his parents passed away because it had to be divided 4 ways between him and his siblings. But when my mom died, Grandpa rewrote his will so that everything would go to my dad and his grandkids. That changed the moment Grandpa found out how my dad had been treating me. He sat him down and told him straight up he was taking my dad off the will. Everything would go to me instead. Grandpa told him, "I'm sorry my daughter cheated on you, but that doesn't give you a free pass to punish the child who had nothing to do with it." He reminded him that not only had my paternity been confirmed multiple times, but that he himself had taken extra steps to be sure, conducting tests without my mom even knowing. So there was no excuse. No lingering doubt. And yet, despite all that, my dad chose to treat me like I didn't belong. Like I was something he had to tolerate. That was what Grandpa couldn't forgive. So when I asked Grandpa if he thought my dad only reached out because of the inheritance, he said honestly that he didn't know. He said he hoped my dad was being sincere, that maybe he was finally realizing how badly he'd messed up. But he couldn't guarantee it. And neither can I. So for now, I've decided to stay silent. I haven't responded to my dad's message, and I won't, at least not until I'm sure he's reaching out for the right reasons. Update 2, I've started college now, been here a few weeks, and so far, things are going really well. I actually forgot to update this because, truthfully, nothing major has happened since that last message my dad sent me. I never replied. And he never followed up. That kind of told me everything I needed to know. If he really wanted to make amends, he would have reached out again. He didn't. So I'm guessing his sudden interest in reconnecting had more to do with Grandpa's money than with me. It's been almost 4 months since we last spoke, and I doubt he'll contact me again. As for my brother, we were never close to begin with, and now we have zero contact. And honestly, I'm completely okay with that. The only person I still talk to from my family is Grandpa. We call each other every other day. I was a little angry at him for not telling me the truth sooner, but in the end, I understand why he didn't. He was just trying to protect me. Looking back, I'm not sure I could have handled hearing everything back then anyway. Learning about my mom's affair, it did change how I see her. But not in a way that made me hate her. It just reminded me she was human, flawed, like everyone else. She wasn't the perfect mother I had built up in my head, but she was still my mom. And I'll always love her. Update 3, hey again, nothing major, but I just wanted to add this. I'm about to graduate in a couple of weeks, which is wild. Somehow, my dad found out about it and sent me an email congratulating me. I spent a couple of days thinking about whether I should reply. But in the end, I didn't. I'm happy with where I am right now. I'm not ready to open that door again, not yet. And if I ever do decide to reach back out, it'll be on my terms. So yeah, that's the latest.